Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about getting an internship as a student. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, if I'm a student, how should I go about getting an internship, a part-time internship at a company? And the short answer is usually you go about it as getting any job where you send a request, you contact the people at the company and you see if they're open to the idea. Although you should know that this can be very tricky, especially for an internship. Let me explain. So something that you should hopefully relate to is that if you try to get someone's time, that's going to be tricky unless you make it worth their while to actually take some of their time. And I know that for some of you, you may think that if you're offering to work as an intern, which is usually, well, it can be a paid position as well, of course, but in many cases you're practically saying that you're going to be at the company and learn, and in return they will get some work hours from you for free. Well, that sounds like a good idea, and to some companies it is, but for most companies this is just a waste of time, because the problem is that you don't know anything. I'm very sorry to say that. Well, most of the interns that you take on as a company, they don't really know how to do anything. At least not anything that is going to end up with the company gaining money from the whole transaction. And that's kind of what most companies favor. They're prioritizing productivity on their main features above anything else. And unless you can actually provide any value within that area, you're not going to be worth their time. Even if you are going to quote unquote learn and like so forth for free, that's actually not free to them, not to the company at the very least. It's still time that they need to allocate. They need to train you, they need to provide you with resources or something like that, and maybe some type of mentor character that gives you some type of insights into how you can contribute in some fashion. And this takes time. It's also one of the reasons why it's hard to be a junior developer, because of the exact same thing. Nobody wants to invest in you. In that scenario, it's even worse, because then you're actually going to get paid for it. Well, maybe not worse, but at the very least it's going to be a similar sort of situation. The reason why I'm stating that it's not worse to be a junior developer versus being an intern is because if a company is hiring a junior developer to begin with, they've already made a mental commitment to acquiring a person that's going to be a full-time employee or something like that. So they're already they're basically trying to fill a position, if that makes sense. An intern is a temporary person. It's a gamble. You may have this person for a few weeks, a few months, a few days, doesn't really matter, and they might be gone tomorrow, and you always have to account for that. And on top of that, they know, depending on the level of the intern, they might know less than a junior developer. It's hard to say, right? Now, if you're going to go for this, as I said, it's important for you to know that you may have to look around a while. It can be very tricky to do this. And the only real way to do it is to either go and check on job postings if there are internships open somewhere. And on top of this person was asking for part-time. That's an even more complicated thing to be part-time, but it is possible to find this. As I said, you just have to look around. I would suggest to you that if you're looking for a temporary internship type of thing related to IT, and especially if it's going to be part-time, I think that you could look into QA work or testing work, because that's more isolated. The reason I say this is because being a QA or a tester of some sort, in many cases you can pretty much go into the company at any point and then learn the basics of how the application works and then help out with testing work and things like that. It's not going to be software development necessarily. It might be related to it, and it's going to get you closer to the whole thing. But the reason why this might be easier for you is because a QA doesn't require the same level of investment from a company, not by a long shot. It's much quicker and easier to have a flexible schedule as a QA developer, especially if you're going to be an intern. Simply because you can you need to set this person up with the computer, and you need to show them how the system is kind of supposed to be working, and then they sit by themselves and they kind of just test things, and that's the key thing. Sitting by yourself, that's also a very big part, I'm very sorry to say, about being an intern, because most of the time, as I was saying, the company doesn't want to invest in you, which means that the whole goal of the company is to gain something from you with the least amount of investment into you. And a QA is a very good role for that sort of thing, where you can, in practice, sit and test by yourself and then post any findings and so forth. The last thing I can say, which is probably my favorite way of going about this, it's the one method that I've found to be the most effective. I've seen it go really well many times, and it probably is, I would say, the best way of getting an internship, regardless of it's part-time or full-time. And that is to come up with a thesis project that is interesting to the company. What do I mean by that? Well, it's very simple. If you are going to sell the idea that you should get to work at an IT company, paid or not paid, internship with a part-time position or a full-time thing, doesn't really matter. You have to sell the idea that you're going to produce some type of value. As I was saying earlier, the problem with an intern is that they don't produce any value, and almost no one can. You can't, without an investment from the company. Not even a full-time developer can be productive. It's just that you're going in there with two different objectives. A programmer who wants to get a job at the company is going with the objective that I'm going to be hired and I'm going to stay here for quite some time. An intern is, from the perspective of the company, just a very low value investment. It's not something that is permanent. It's not the same level of commitment. So if you're going to make the sell that they should invest something in you, you have to give them something they want. Now, usually when it comes to thesis projects, especially these days, anything that you can do related to developing things like business insight systems is going to be a big hit with practically everything. There are, of course, novelty things that you can build. I've seen students come in and build like automated help desks where they wire up a camera to a monitor, and then they like ping people on Slack and things like that when people are looking for them and so forth. But usually Business Insight is a very good bet. Like, they go in and they say that, oh yeah, you have all this data about your customers and so forth. How would you like me to sit here and make a thesis project about, I don't know, something? It can be machine learning and like try to analyze or do data mining, or it can be just gathering everything together into a nice platform of some sort where you can see statistics and you can query for different questions about your data and your customers and so forth. Anything in this area will be an extremely interesting thing to most companies. The reason is because, as I was saying, because the company it's focusing in general on product development and product delivery. That has their developers completely occupied pretty much all the time. And there's tons of salespeople and HR and different types of stakeholders within the company who really wants this stuff. They want answers to these questions, but they simply can't get anything into the backlog of the developers because they're busy all the time with product development. And that's where you can come in and basically build this whole thing by yourself and produce something that's pretty cool. And as I said, a lot of companies, they want this, it's just that nobody's there to build it, and that's where you come in. It's an isolated thing. You don't really have to learn how exactly how the main system works. You can build your own web application or desktop application, whatever it is, and you really only need to connect to wherever their data is. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're looking for an internship, and even worse, a part-time internship, you should be ready that that is a very tricky thing to do. It's tricky because quite a lot of companies don't really want to waste time on something that isn't business critical, and an intern is usually not going to be able to produce all that much value in the short amount of time they're going to be at the company. So it's a hard position to be in. The only way that you, in my experience, you can solve this problem is by showing that you can work in isolation, or that you have a work position where they don't really have to invest all that much into you and you will still produce some type of value, or possibly that you sell yourself so good that they actually want to hire you. But then you're basically just going through the internship thing until you get to be a full-time employee. And I argue that if you find it too hard to get a software developer internship, you can have a look at QA work or testing work. That's also a feasible strategy because it's lower investment with higher return on investment for the company. And lastly, I think that the best solution for you, or the best suggestion, is to find a thesis project that you can do at the company, and then you can call them up and say, hey, I've noticed that your company does this and that. And kind of be a little bit of an entrepreneur here and sell the idea that, well, you probably have all of this data and so forth. How would you like me to take a look at setting up a system for you where you can figure out how to improve your conversion rate, or how to gain other business insights into your customer base and your product? That usually goes over really well with a lot of companies because they want this, and they most likely have something like that, but they're probably not very happy with it. Nobody is. But they can't get any of their full-time employee developers to do the work. So it's a very good way of getting in if you're looking for an internship. Have a great day.